Welcome back to part 2 of outdoor learning, getting started outdoor learning. My name is Carrie Truby.
And I'm Sarah Rogers, and we work for the Cathance River Education Alliance based in Topsom, Maine. So we have partnered with MIA, the Maine Environmental Education Association, to create a 3-part video series that is designed to support teachers across the state in taking their kids outside for outdoor learning this fall and beyond. And the first part of the video series, in case you haven't seen it, was basically the supplies, routines, logistics, materials that you need for outdoor learning. So it's sort of the nuts and bolts. What do you actually need? The how-to of getting your kids outside. How to transition from point A to point B, going indoors to outdoors. So this is sort of the how-to. That was part 1. Part 3 is going to be actual changes that you'll want to make to your teaching style in order to be ready and prepared for the unique issues that arise when you're teaching outdoors, and how to deal with some of the most common issues that come up, like, can I climb a tree or not? What do I do with banging around this stick? What do I do about bugs? So some of the issues that arise that are unique to outdoor teaching, we will help you figure out how to tackle those. And today's theme is called Simple Activities, and that is exactly our goal. So for today, we hope that you leave after this short 10-minute video with a few back pocket ideas of simple, easy, structured activities that you can pick up as early as this afternoon and do with your kids. So these are all activities that we've chosen because they require very little preparation, very few materials. They're easily adapted for grades K to 5, and they're short, simple, and structured activities that sort of get you outdoors for an activity in the habit of going outside. So our goal for today is that you can leave this video ready to take your class outside tomorrow.
So before we give you the actual activities, we wanted to give you a little bit of advice for getting started. And we refer to that as the 3 S's. Start short, start structured, and start simple. Short is pretty self-explanatory. Just go out for a short period of time. It's much better to do more frequent short bursts than saving up all of your time and doing a big, long period once a month. Structured means you need to set clear goals and boundaries. And we like to think of this in the fairy house incident. If you take your students outside and say, go build a fairy house, it will quickly decay into chaos. But if you tell them, we're going to build a fairy house and you are going to build your fairy house in this location next to this tree, you can use these materials and you will have 10 minutes to do it. It gives it more structure, it gives the students more of an idea of what they're expected to do, and you've quickly transitioned their recess brain to their classroom focused brain, and they still have the opportunity to have all the sensory experiences of being outdoors. Start simple. First thing people think of when they think of outdoor education is that's how I'm going to do my science. You have to build up to that. The short, simple, structured activities will give your students the endurance to realize the difference between going outside for recess and going outside to learn. If you go outside immediately to get them to learn content, they'll have a hard time absorbing content as well as behavior. So start with a quick, familiar activity such as a read aloud, a writing prompt, play a game of Simon Says, any activity that you're comfortable with doing in your classroom.
All right, so now that you're outdoors, what do you do? There are so many different things you could do outdoors. And what we've done is kind of grouped all the outdoor activity options into 3 categories. And these are arranged right here in terms of simple to more complex. So first, we're going to be talking about open air school. This is where you take your normal classroom activities and you just do them outdoors in fresh air. Once you've mastered that, you're ready for step 2, which is outdoor exploration. So these are activities and lessons that are rooted in an actual outdoor experience. You have to be outdoors to do them. And finally, stage 3 is going to be curriculum connections. So specific grade level content and connecting that with outdoor experiences.
The concept of open air school actually started in the 1920s with the tuberculosis outbreak. That's the black and white picture you see there. And that's exactly what the teachers did. They took what they did in their classroom and they just brought it outside. The color picture is more what it looks like now. It's a little different, not quite so clumped together with a chalkboard in front of you. But this is your indoor learning outside. So your Simon Says, your motor breaks, your yoga, read alouds, any of those activities can be done outside. So the immediate thought is, well, why would I bother doing that? I only have so much time in my day. The first is, as we talked about with the curriculum connection, you're going to need to build your students' endurance for being outside. Before they can do any curriculum activities, they're going to need to understand that sometimes outdoors is still a classroom. The other thing is it's a great way to incorporate those sensory breaks. If you go outside and your students can move their bodies a little bit differently and they feel the wind on their face and they hear the birds, all of those things will help students calm down and focus. There's a lot of research around that, helping especially students who have trouble with focusing. And the final one that we think of easily is that generating of writing topics. A lot of times students have a hard time coming up with a small moment story. But if you've just gone for a walk through your woods and seen a chipmunk run in front of you, there's your small moment story. Where they have trouble with descriptive writing, and if you've sat in your solo spot for 5 minutes and you've been able to really closely observe this piece of moss in front of you, that gives you some good words to use for your descriptive writing. So while these might not look like they're getting you towards any sort of fabulous, amazing outdoor time, this open air school concept will start to build that endurance.
All right, so once you're ready to move on to a little bit more adventurous activities outdoors, outdoor exploration. We want to remind you always the 3 S's. Keep it short, keep it simple, and keep it structured. We're going to share with you now some of our favorite back pocket activities that are all short, simple, and structured that help get your kids outside. So first here is mandala making and nature patterns. This is super simple. The only instructions, you can make this as structured as you want. You can be as little as just saying, please use materials that you find on the ground. So remind students not to pick living plants or pick leaves off the trees, but use the materials that they find on the ground to arrange them in any sort of nature pattern. Or you could choose to go very structured with this and encourage them to create something that has symmetry in it or a certain number of components. But usually what we do is just use this as a kind of open-ended nature exploration activity.
Another short, simple, structured activity is a rainbow hike. The students all get a crayon and they go outside and you find something that matches your color crayon. It's a great thing to do during different seasons because students will notice that the colors are changing that are easier to find. Once they find their special item, you can use your camera to take a picture of them and put it on the wall to talk about how your space looks outdoors.
One of our go-to activities for outdoor learning that you may already be familiar with is deer ears. So deer ears is when you help your students really focus on their listening. So you take your hands and turn them into little cups, put them behind your ears so your ears stick out funny, and then you look up and you find a sound that you can focus on. So you focus maybe at the wind blowing in the trees. You could focus on the noise of the teacher's voice, but find a sound, preferably a sound in nature, that the students can turn their body until they're looking up and focusing on that sound. Then practice taking your deer ears off, putting your deer ears back on, take them off and on, and have the students see which way can they hear better. And the surprise is that it's a really big difference. So students should be able to tell that they can hear a whole lot better with their deer ears on. Deer ears is a great sort of calming down activity to help students just quiet down and notice the sounds around them. A super partner activity with this is something we call stalking walking. So whereas deer ears is focused listening, the stalking walking is focused moving. So you think really carefully and deliberately about where you're going to put your foot. You roll your foot in just a certain way and you step on just the right area of ground so that no one will hear you walking. We sometimes use this when we're outdoors on a woods walk or on a nature walk with kids. We certainly don't do this for the entire nature walk, but for a short portion of it, just to see how quietly we can move through the woods as a group. And it's pretty impressive how quiet they can be. If you want to turn this into a game, what you can do is have a few students be the deer. So go have them stand with their eyes closed and put their deer ears on. And then the rest of the class very slowly creeps toward them with the stalking walking, trying as hard as they can to be super quiet. And the deer, if they hear any sounds with their deers, can just point at where they heard the sound coming from.
Another short, structured activity is a solo sit. And this is a great opportunity for students to use all their senses and really get to know one particular spot in their natural world. We know a lot of kindergarten teachers who go out with their students every week, and this is how they start their outdoor classroom time. Every student has one spot that they're going to sit at, and they start out sitting for maybe 1 to 2 minutes, and by the end they've probably worked up to 5 minutes, which is a long time for a kindergartner to sit very still. The beauty of this that makes them able to sit for that long is they're not actually sitting still. They're sitting in one spot, but while they're there, they have freedom to do what they want. So they might build a nest next to them if they were talking about birds in their classroom, or they might find a stick and kind of dig a hole in the ground, or build a fairy house, or just lie on their backs and look up at the sky and watch the clouds float by. With younger students, we've made toilet paper tube binoculars, and they can use those for focused listening. That's what this little guy is doing in our picture. It's just a great way to get to know your space. It's a nice way for you to reflect on the year. You could take pictures of your students at their space the first day of school and the last day of school to see how they've changed. You can track seasonal changes by students marking one tree and watching how it changes over time. So really, the solo sit is a spot to embark on a lot of different outdoor adventures.
All right, the last activity we want to share with you is the Outdoor Classroom Museum. So this was actually a trick that we learned from one of our partner teachers. And the idea here is just to create a simple structure where your students can put their collections on display. So before you come back in after your outdoor time, they can take a favorite rock or an amazing magical leaf or pine cone and put it in this special collection box for their whole class to see. In terms of short, simple, and structured, the activity here can actually just be collecting. So the activity itself, we don't want you to be afraid of collecting things from nature. It's perfectly fine as long as you're not picking live plants. It's perfectly fine to be going out and collecting things. And you could give kids some themes, such as collect something of a particular color or texture or shape. And then this is a place where they can come back and share their discoveries with friends.
So we mentioned curriculum connections are something to work towards. The outdoor classroom provides an opportunity to address all forms of grade level content in a hands-on way. It really brings the learning to life. So in this picture, you can see some students are doing a habitat diversity study where they put their tray in a field, collected all the different kinds of plants they could find in that field, and then compared those to another collection they did out in the forest to collect all the different plants in the forest, and then they made collages to compare the two. You could also do a life cycle study with seeds or a geology study, and you could tie math into this as well, or writing topics. If you're having trouble with these curriculum connections, you've been doing the small learning outside and you want to move on, but you don't quite know what to do, there's endless resources. Forest Service and Project Learning Tree have books of lesson plans, as does Fish and Wildlife. Fish and Wildlife also has kits to loan you with skulls and pelts. Your local land trust is a great resource, and there's many, many more. If you look at MIA's website, they also have a listing of all the resources in your area.
And lastly, we want to remind you that outdoor learning does look different. So two of the most absolutely common phrases you will hear outdoors are right here in green. The look at this, look at this. Students will be so excited and find wonderful, exciting things that they want to share with you, and that's great. You should encourage it, but also remind them that they can share with friends instead of always coming to you. And the second question, the what's this? Don't feel like you have to be able to identify every bug, slug, plant, creature in nature. We certainly don't. What you want to do is flip this question. So as soon as a kid asks you, what's this? Turn it on its head and encourage them to observe instead. So just ask them, I don't know, let's look. How many legs? What kind of antennas does it have? What color do you see on its back? So actually help them describe the creature that they're holding instead of worrying so much about identifying the specific species. Other pieces of advice to remember is that when you're outdoors, the students might be louder, more excited, they might move their bodies more. That's fine. Before redirecting, just check in because they actually might still be on task. And if you do need to calm things down because it gets a little too crazy, remember to plug into the senses. The beautiful thing about being outdoors is that if you can quiet everyone down and put on your deer ears, there are neat sounds of nature to hear. So it won't
it won't necessarily be silent. Once the students are quiet, you'll be able to hear the leaves rustling, the chipmunk crawling through the leaves, the birds chirping. So remember to use the senses, and that should calm things down pretty quickly.
So the three major takeaways we want you to get from this short talk is to go out often. Make outdoor learning the norm. Yours can be the class that goes out every week. If you go out for short periods of time repeatedly, it will have much more impact on your students. The second point is the three S's. Start short, start structured, and start simple. You can expand the curriculum at a later date, but right now, just get them outside with some activity. And the last point is remember that being outdoors is exactly what many of your students and probably you need right now. It's a chance to kind of take a deep breath and relax and listen to something other than the sounds of your classroom. Get a chance to take a little break. So good luck and have fun.